Jonah Lomu was one of the most inspirational people that you could possibly find. A very humble man, a very intense man, a man that we probably didn't see the best of him because of his ailments, because of his kidney issues that he did start suffering in his late teens and early 20s. But in no way, shape, or form did it diminish the legacy that he was able to create, not only on a rugby pitch, but also in the game of life. One of the most giving, one of the most humble individuals that many have ever talked about. I mean, Coach Steve Hansen, Richie McCaw, many others really talked about the importance of Jonah Lomu within the All Blacks going back into 1994 when he first debuted with the All Blacks. A young man that came through from a very tough neighborhood in Auckland and really came through and started developing into one of the most important names in the rugby world. If his career would have been longer, you probably would have been looking at him alongside a Lionel Messi, a Cristiano Ronaldo, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, along those names. That kind of stratospheric type of name was Jonah Lomu. He was a man that really helped redefine the game of rugby in the entire world, in the entire planet, regardless of where you went outside of the United States. You talked and you mentioned Jonah Lomu. People knew who he was. A big, burly man, really strong, freakishly athletic for his size, and very mobile for his frame. He really changed the way rugby was played. He was one of those individuals that truly and honestly changed the way things were playing. We used to see smaller wingers playing outside. He was the first one to really change the rules of the game when it came to that. But it wasn't what he did on the pitch. It was what he did for the game outside of it that really made him a difference maker. Was one of the players that really pushed forward the concept of having rugby, or at least rugby at the sevens version, be able to be more accessible worldwide. We saw him play in Argentina back, I believe, in 2001 in his sevens tournament, and he really went out and said, sevens is going to be the game of the future for rugby. And that's where he really started to see things go forward, not only just as a world game, but as an Olympic sport. He was on that committee that helped rugby end up in the Olympic Games next year in Rio, and start to see places like Brazil, places like the United States, places that really weren't powerhouses from a rugby standpoint, really begin to grow and really begin to embrace the game. Some places slower than others, but that's what really made the difference. And that was his legacy. But he was also a very giving man, a man that was constantly looking out for the best in his fellow man, and he was looking to help out individuals that were in need. He was constantly looking, especially when he was able to change mentally and change his stance as far as his spirituality. You did see him become an even more giving and an even more committed, even more passionate man than he was when he was on the pitch. But he was still, in no way, shape, or form, not being diminished as far as the type of human being that he was since the day he was born. I don't want to cry about that. I don't think that we should lament losing him. I think we should celebrate him. His legacy is much greater than losing your life unexpectedly, expectedly, or anything in between. I think we should celebrate him. There's a tradition in Maori culture, the waka papa, that really is something that shows cultural imperatives of how important life, people, and relationships are. And with him, many of us, although we probably didn't know who he was personally, he was a man that really made it seem like we had a relationship with him. We made it seem like there was a connection. We made it seem like there was an individual there that truly and honestly made a difference. And I think that's the legacy that we really need to make and continue growing. That he was one of those individuals that really created a change, in a very positive change for a game that many have fallen in love with just by watching him. And I think that's what we really need to reward on a day like today, where right now in New Zealand, you're starting to see a service right now that's being given in his honor. So, I mean, that's one of the more important things as far as rugby is concerned, to know what players like him and players before him have been able to do and sacrifice and do as far as the game of rugby is concerned, to make it grow and to make it established and to make it so culturally interesting and colorful, and from a camaraderie standpoint, make you not just fall in love with the game, but keep you in there. I've always said to people, I fell in love with the game by playing it, but I also stayed passionate about it because of the people that I met through it. And that's the camaraderie. That's why this game is so important. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows about that. I wanted to really say thanks for what he's been able to offer. I know he's listening somewhere, but you know what? Sometimes you have to appreciate people in life, but when you can't, you still have to make them known that, you know what, they really were an impact in somebody's life. And to many that really fell in love with rugby, that man really had a huge impact in it. So as far as that starting out, I hope everybody's having a great Thanksgiving or had a great Thanksgiving. It's been a great one for me as well. But more importantly, a lot of football going on. Real Madrid playing Eibar. It's kind of funny because this time about a year or so ago, Real Madrid were playing Eibar in Eibar, and they were able to beat them 4-0. And then the following week, they played Barcelona, and things kind of started. Well, actually, not play Barcelona, but they were actually on a roll heading into the Club World Cup, and many were looking at them as probably one of the best teams in the world, the best team in the world at that moment, without a doubt. But things kind of changed after that Valencia game. You started seeing a beginning and an end to that Real Madrid side, and we really haven't seen that team really achieve that top level. And I think that that's one of the things that Rafa Benitez is looking to do. Although, yeah, there's been some strife, there's been some issues as far as that's concerned. I think that we need to start looking at what Madrid is going to have to do in order to assert themselves. They need to reestablish an identity. You didn't see a Madrid with an identity against Barcelona. You did see it a little bit midweek, but they kind of lost it 4-3, and kind of being tight there towards the end. But Madrid does have an identity. They need somebody in the middle hold, and that's when you start missing that Xabi Alonso type. You start missing those defensive midfielders in the past. As soon as they've left, you've seen the form dip a little bit. Xabi Alonso, and you can go back even a little bit more than a decade ago when Claude Makelele came through, and when he left Real Madrid, that's when Madrid started having problems yet again, containing and really holding the ball in the middle of the pitch. And it wasn't until Xabi Alonso came along that you really saw that really big-time playmaker come through and give that edge to Madrid. Really, that control, that presence in the middle. And we haven't seen that player for Madrid step through. Maybe it's Casemiro. He has been able to step up in a big way in certain instances this season, but not playing in the Clásico. Well, that's where all your money's made, man. That's where you make your paycheck. That's where you make your legacy. Those are legacy-making games, and he wasn't there. Not his fault, though, but he was one of those players that really made a huge difference, not just by his presence, but by his absence. Meanwhile, Barcelona, if you look at what they've been able to do, just amazing. Alvaro Recoba was talking on Uruguayan radio today, saying, you know what, Luis Suarez is one of the best Uruguayan players ever, but what he was able to do to adjust and be able to fix his situation as far as trying to adapt to Barcelona is that he didn't come in with the same mentality as a Samuel Eto'o, as a Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He didn't come in to compete with Lionel Messi to be the star on the team. What he did was he went and tried to be at the same level as Messi, but also try and help him out, and it's reciprocal. It ended up being a very reciprocal relationship, and you've seen it on the pitch with the results that have been able to emerge in the past few months. I mean, they've had that same kind of beginning and ending point as far as their struggles, because last year, going back to what Madrid was doing, while Madrid were dominating, Barca were kind of struggling. Yeah, they were having wins, but they had lost 2 matches in a row. They were behind Madrid, and they were a little bit rocky as far as things coming along. Luis Suarez was just getting into the mix just now, more or less about this point, October, November, after being suspended after the World Cup. And on top of that, they were able to ride it out. And now you see Messi as well as Neymar as well as Luis Suarez really coming through in a big way. And then, of course, you have a few role players here and there. Iniesta, I don't think I'd call him a role player in any way, shape, or form, but it's just those three are so dominant and they're able to interact with each other so well that That's right now. That's why they're doing so well. I mean, there's no two ways about it. They're the ones that make things happen. They're the ones that are really creating so much more than anybody expected them to so quickly, I should add. That's where you start seeing the big difference between Barca and the rest of the teams right now. As far as that's concerned, they head back home. They play Real Sociedad, and a Sociedad side that has not won at the Camp Nou since 1990-91. So it's been a very tough, a very difficult place for Sociedad to get points. Last time Sociedad were able to get points at the Camp Nou was, I think it was back in 1995-96. So since then, every visit to Barcelona has not been a very memorable one for the Churiurdin. Keep that in mind. I believe that trend will continue. Although you're going to see a different Sociedad side, a more not a more direct, but a more possession-oriented team that's going to try and kind of neutralize Barca a little bit in the middle, I guess you could say. A coach, obviously, that's very familiar with the core of this Barca group, the Iniestas, the Messis, etc. Those types of players, very familiar in Eusebio Sacristan. Of course, he was one of he was also at Barca a few years ago. He was one of the assistants for Frank Rijkaard back in the day. Before, actually, that was after Henk Tecate was he the main guy. Obviously, Johan Niskins came in that final season or so that Frank Rijkaard was the coach, but he was part of that mix as well. Was Eusebio Sacristan. He's also been able to replace David Moyes, and you see a different Sociedad side moving the ball around a little bit more. Great quote by Sergio Canales today on Spanish radio. He comes out and says, "You know what? We're just playing and moving the ball around better than we were with David Moyes. David Moyes was being too direct." And right now, you hear that, oh, there we go. That's one of the things why David Moyes got sacked. I mean, when you start hearing that, he was too direct. He was being too English, I guess, for lack of a better term, as far as that's concerned. So, interesting there, what's going on. We move on to the opposite side of the Atlantic, and River, and you see Marcelo Gallardo saying, you know what? We're just getting ready to go to the Club World Cup. Not able to get the result that they needed against Huracan, a very organized Huracan side that really has come through in some really important measures with a playing style that's really compact, really practical, but then you do start seeing some individual play that really is impressive to see in the final against Santa Fe. I don't want to go into too much as far as the Copa Sudamericana final is concerned. I'm going to do a preview on that next week, so I don't want to get too much into it. But I wanted to talk about the River side at least for now. For River, I mean, in the last 18, actually since they returned from Japan from the Suruga Bank Cup, they played 18 matches. They've lost 9 of them. So a little bit punch drunk as far as Copa Lib, probably. A little bit punch drunk after the success they had during that stretch, most likely. And that's been a very worrisome issue for a lot of teams. As soon as they win Copa Lib mid-year, remember the cycle is a little bit different in Argentine football or in South American football in general. Their calendar year is a little bit different compared to Europe. The Champions League, obviously Champions League finals to the end of the European season, while the Copa Lib tournament is played pretty much at the middle of the season. And unlike the Europa League and the Champions League being played simultaneously, it's like playing the Champions League at the first part of the season, let's say from August to December, and then playing the Europa League from January on to May or April, give or take. So I mean, it's a kind of a different format. So that's why, if as soon as you have Champions League done, it would be like Barca, Madrid, Bayern Munich, Manchester United, etc. Just kind of taking the foot off the pedal a little bit and just cruising to the end. That's kind of what happens in South American football a little bit, and that's one of the big problems that they've had and Rivers had, especially going into the second half of the year, trying to get focused on that big match that they're looking forward to challenging Barca for that Club World Cup. We'll see if it happens, because mentally you don't have two teams that are on the same at the same level. Just mentally they're not. They're just not, because of so much time off between one title and the other. Meanwhile, Barcelona, they're right in the middle of a race. They're in the middle of Champions League, so they're mentally really in it as far as their campaign's concerned. For River, they've had their tournament season as far as the 30-team league they were participating in. Yeah, that's been over for about 3 weeks, almost a month, and they've been just playing Copa Sudamericana until recently, until they were eliminated yesterday against Huracan. So mentally, yeah, you do have those gaps, those spaces where you don't have the consistent play to keep you mentally focused. And I think that's one of the big problems that River's going to be facing in this Club World Cup. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. I'll give you a little preview as far as what I see from the big teams in this tournament. Obviously, I'm going to see if I could get a couple of individuals to kind of give me a little bit of information about some of the other teams that are participating in this Club World Cup. Great stuff that's going on. MLS playoffs, actually, the conference finals are this coming weekend, so that'll be a very exciting thing to be looking at as the MLS Cup. It'll be going on in this next few days, right around the corner. So that'll be something exciting to look forward to. I'll also be doing some basketball during the week, doing some stuff for Gazeta World as the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to be in town to face the Miami Heat. A lot of stuff NBA wise, a lot of stuff football, a couple of rugby things as they're getting ready for the Pan American Rugby Association. They're doing their edition of their Six Nations in the coming months, starting in February, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, you get started with Six Nations, and towards the end of the year, it'll be the Rugby Championship, which is pretty much it's the top 4 teams in the world. So I mean, there's no other way to look at it. And then the race for the 5th place, which is called the Six Nations now. Well, that's going to start sometime very soon. Actually, it'll start in March, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. Maybe I'll have a couple of people on to really give me a little bit of information as to what should be expected, what's the outlook of this tournament, and several other things. So keep sending your questions, keep sending information, keep sending whatever you need to me to discuss about. I mean, if I have a question that I can answer for you, be happy to do it. If I can't answer it, I'll make sure I find somebody that can. That's for sure. So guys, talk to you later. Peace. Ciao.